Hello everybody, welcome back to the shop. I'm in the process of cleaning this beautiful and original Type 11, probably a late Type 11, maybe 11 and a half, 11 and 3/4, you get the idea, to make it into an attractive user. I also have a video sharing the history and a deep dive into the disassembly. Please check that one out if you want. But in this video I'm going to gently clean it up and restore it to something it might have looked like maybe in 90, 100 years ago. I think that's a little trickier than just shining it up, and hopefully you'll appreciate that. To summarize the provenance of these two planes, I purchased them from the third owner. The seller told me these were his grandfather's planes, who was a craftsman and purchased them new. I'm under the impression these planes have not been touched and sat in the proverbial barn. I think Type 11s are fairly common, so I don't think this is a particularly valuable or collectible plane. Even still, I wouldn't want to bugger what value it has, so I'm going to gently clean it to lighten the patina a little bit, put an oil finish on the wood. I'll also shine up the brass and remove the surface rust. My goal is to turn it into a nice user, and hopefully you'll enjoy that. So stick around, let's get to it. Strangely, this plane was missing the nut that attaches a chip breaker to the iron. Fortunately, I have an extra one. And here is this iron of interest next to another Stanley iron, and I've lined it up. And you can see there's a good half-inch of material that's been worn away from this old World War I vintage iron. Just try to imagine how many times this thing must have been hand-sharpened to remove that much material. Every Stanley plane seems to be obligated to have some white paint on it, and I only see a trace of it here on the back of the frog, and a little bit there on the tip of the knob. So that's a little unusual, but we'll take it. This is a mildly abrasive wheel for my Dremel. This is just a brass brush. I ended up shining the iron and chip breaker a little more than I wanted to because I was a little careless. Brought it to the wire wheel, and the wire wheel ended up putting some scratches in the iron. So in an attempt to get the scratches from the wire wheel out, I had to sand it with worn sandpaper. A little more than I wanted to. It's looking pretty good, and it still has some of the patina on it, so it looks like an old iron, which is a look I'm kind of going for. But you can see too where there's a little lip around the edge. It's a little shinier than I'd like, but you can put the patina back on the iron if you want. It's a little involved, or you can just leave it, or you can shine it up. And I'm gonna probably leave this as it is. They look a bit old, but certainly in good shape. It was just a little bit of paint up in the tip of the knob here that I had to very carefully dig out. The knob and tote are looking pretty good, and I've finished these before in other videos, so I didn't want to bore you. First step I did was I rubbed it very aggressively with this very coarse steel wool, and that removed a lot of the relatively soft gunk and dirt and grime that was on the surface of the wood. As I removed that and got down more to the rosewood, which is pretty hard, I went with a sanding sponge. This is worn, and it kind of conforms to the surfaces, and a little bit of gentle hand sanding with a worn 220 grit. And it took a while, but these are looking just beautiful. No blemishes, hardly a dent or scratch or ding. The very back of the horn looks as though it might have been truncated a little bit, but other than that, these are ready for a finish, and I think they're going to look awesome. The three brass pieces I ended up cleaning with my homemade brass cleaner. This is just vinegar, flour, and salt. I let them soak for 40 minutes or so, and then gently scrubbed them with a nylon brush. Don't want them to be too shiny or polished, I just wanted them to be clean. Discovered on the frog there seems to be a little overspray, if you would, of Japanning. It's not sprayed that I know of, so I'm not sure what it is. But I decided to leave it. I just cleaned up this face a little bit with a gentle brass wheel on the Dremel tool and other gentle abrasives. The Japanning looks to be in fantastic shape. It was a little dull. I rubbed a little bit of the Howard's Feed and Wax on it, and it looks like it has a nice sheen to it. And I decided to remove the patina from the lateral adjuster, again using abrasive wheels on a Dremel tool. Now you can clearly see the Stanley stamp in it. And the lever cap I just gently cleaned up, got off most of the surface rust, still a little bit of brown on it, and I hit it with a little steel waltz. I did take a little more of the tarnish off of the spring tab here. So here's the body of the plane, looking good. I did take a little time to remove some of the heavy patina, mostly hand sanding, a little shinier in spots than I'd like, but I'm not going to get upset over that. Did notice maker's initials here, PSP, on the right cheek. The Japanning looks to be pretty good shape. I did clean this in the sink with some good soap and water and a heavy scrub and a good coating of Howard's Feed and Wax. I prefer to use tung oil as a finish on the furniture, but my container of tung oil went bad recently. So I'm going to try just good old-fashioned boiled linseed oil. I don't think it's going to be a bad choice. For those of you not familiar, linseed oil is just flaxseed oil that you can buy actually in a supermarket where I live. And boiled linseed oil has dryers in it, because ordinary linseed oil, it will polymerize, but it can take days or weeks or even longer to fully quote-unquote dry. The oils react with the oxygen in the atmosphere and form a polymer of sorts. Gives you a decent finish. So when you put dryers in it, it just helps speed that up. So you go from days down to hours. And the technique of boiled linseed oil and oil finishes is you just keep applying it, put it on liberally, let the wood soak up as much as it can, 20 minutes, half hour, and then wipe off the excess, because any amounts you don't wipe off can get gummy. It's kind of hard to put it on poorly. You just glop it on, give it some time to set, some number of minutes, and then wipe off the excess and let it dry. Okay, it's been a few minutes. Wiping off the excess, and that is beautiful. Boy, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous, huh? And what I like about oil finishes is they feel good in your hands too. They have a nice softness of velvetyness to them. And here's the knob, and that's how that guy turned out. A little darker than I would have liked. Can't really see a lot of the grain. That's a shame. But it's kind of the way the wood took it. So here's where I'm going to leave the iron at this juncture. There's still a little bit of staining, but you can really nicely read the trademark now. And on the other side there seems to be an H stamped into it. I don't know what that's about. If anybody knows, please leave a comment. I'd love to learn. And the blade was sharpened sort of on a double bevel. There's a very gentle bevel here, and then what appears to be at the tip, 25-degree bevel. I think if I'm going to go and sharpen this up, I'm probably just going to worry about the very tip. I don't want to remove all that material. Doesn't look to be very straight either. Well, I just set my gauge to 3 different angles, 25, 27.5, and 30 degrees, and I'm still hitting the heel of this secondary bevel. So whatever this was ground to, it's in excess of 30 degrees, which is very durable. I think I'm going to have to go back to 25. That's the angle I prefer for no particular reason. And I'm going to have to do a fair amount of milling to take away all this metal before I get to the tip. And I'm not going to bore you with it. It's going to be a coarse diamond stone, and then we will polish it up to hopefully something close to razor sharpness. And I've done it many times before, so check out my other videos if you want more details. I've been going at the back of this iron for a while. The good news is it's pretty flat, so I had no trouble getting a shine the whole way. The trouble is I have a whole series of pits up at the very tip. And I'm going to try to see if I can lap them out, because if I can't, then I'm going to have to grind the bevel edge all the way past these pits, and that's going to be a lot of grinding that I'd rather not do if I don't have to. Well, I've been at this a half hour, and I got the back pretty flat. I still have a little bit of pitting and a bit of a serrated edge up here. I don't think I'm going to get it out on this side. I'm going to have to grind this bevel back a little further than I would have liked to otherwise. Kind of a shame to remove so much metal from such a historic iron, but if you actually want to use this iron, you got to do what you got to do. So we're ready to start putting an edge on it, I think, and I'm going to have to come back a little bit from the very edge, get rid of that little bit of pitting. So the good news is, where somebody before me had ground a bevel somewhere around 20 degrees, it's not taken nearly as long to get the primary bevel. It's, I guess, technically the secondary for me, but I'm going for a 25-degree bevel. And I've got it most of the way across, but there's a nick here, here, and here. Probably not showing up, but if you run your fingernail along it, certainly feel them. Well, it has taken me about an hour. I think I have a good clean line all the way across. I don't seem to have any pitting on the very edge. I did implement a little bit of the David Charlesworth ruler trick on this face, so the very tip of this edge has had a little bit ground away. I thought that would help hedge my bets in grinding out any of the last remnants of any pitting. So at this point it can be polished up, and I should end up with a nice clean square sharp iron. Okay, I've spent some time, and you've seen this before, but that's a nice sharp iron, no nicks. If that goes into a plane, this plane will cut. And here's just some of the hardened steel that I removed with this diamond stone. So here she is, all assembled, not looking like anything particularly remarkable. This is a 1-inch thick piece of rough sawn poplar. Alright, just got some little chippies there. Let me go a little bit deeper depth of cut. Ooh, look at that. Go a little deeper. And that's looking pretty fine. Smooth as silk already. And I would say there's nothing wrong with that. Did I get the whole thing? There you go. Wonderful. Well, and there she is. Isn't she an absolute beauty? She's cleaned and tuned up. She works like a champ. And I'm just thrilled to have it added to my user collection. Not that I need another number 4. Just to summarize, the extent of the tune-up was essentially sharpening the iron. The rest of it was simply cleaning up all the parts and pieces, some of them more so than others. I'm really tickled with how it came out. I'm not sure this is the end of my restoration work on this guy, but that would be the topic of another video. Hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun doing it. And I think restoring these planes to their former glory is an awful lot of fun, and you have some very useful tools for a workshop. For reference, I'll put this Type 10 out so you can remember this guy looked an awful lot like that guy when I started this project. I'm kind of a fan of the older patina look. My idea of a restoration isn't necessarily to make it look like it did from the factory as much as maybe this is what it looked like in 1922 or something like that. But in any case, it's a super plane and will be a great addition to the workshop. Well, that's it for this video. I appreciate you stopping by. This hand plate is not only good looking, but works really well, despite not doing anything to tune it up beyond sharpening the iron. I'm not sure, but wouldn't be surprised if the original owner spent some time tuning this guy up. After all, the iron was quite flat. Please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment. And as always, take care, stay safe, and please keep your eyes out for the next one.